Mr Kerr.
Presiding Officer, it was a pleasure to follow Ruth Maguire's speech. I greatly appreciated, and also that she's a fellow member of the Education, Children and Young People's Committee is another reason I'm grateful to follow her. And I'm grateful to be able to stand and respond to the Constitution Europe External Affairs and Culture Committee inquiry report on Scotland's international work. But let me say straight off the bat that there is a slightly surreal feel to many of the speeches that I've heard from the SNP and Green benches this afternoon. They seem to be living in a parallel reality. They never mention the United Kingdom. They seem to have made some kind of solemn binding oath that they'll not mention the United Kingdom. Well, let me remind the members of this Parliament, foreign policy is reserved. Foreign policy is reserved. Do we understand that in this chamber? I hope we do. I will give way to Alistair Allen.
Alistair Allen. Mr Allen, can you wait till your microphone comes on a second? Can we have Dr Allen's microphone?
I think it's on now, is it?
Thank you. Does the member feel that's his role or his party's role, just to tell us our place on these matters, just a matter of days after his party has been trounced in local elections in Scotland?
Stephen Kerr.
I don't think we've been trounced in any elections. That's another surreal remark, if I may say so. The purpose of my remarks is to remind members of the fact that we are part of the most successful partnership between two countries in the history of the world, in the United Kingdom. And I remind the Chamber again that foreign policy is reserved and that Scotland already benefits from a superlative global network through the work of the United Kingdom Diplomatic Service and associated trade missions. One of my finest memories as a member of Parliament at Westminster was the opportunity to would the Cabinet Secretary like to take the floor, because he seems to be muttering?
Cabinet Secretary.
I would be absolutely delighted. I'd be grateful if Stephen Kerr could tell us when his comments are going to move on to the committee report, which is actually the subject of this afternoon's debate.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, ironically, while he was muttering and waving papers from his position, I was moving on to the subject of the debate. Actually, I feel like I've been talking about the subject of the debate since I stood up, but I understand he wishes to distract me through his antics from a sedentary position. I was saying, Cabinet Secretary, that one of my finest memories as a Member of Parliament at Westminster was the opportunity to visit Kenya with fellow colleagues from the all-party parliamentary group on malaria. And on that trip, I got to see up front, in close quarters, the horrors that millions of people around the world face in their everyday lives. And this suffering will never depart me. I also got to see the positive impact of the British overseas aid that was being dispensed and the effect that was having on those most in need. And the duty, diligence and care shown by our foreign diplomatic and aid services made me incredibly proud both to be Scottish and to be British. And as part of our United Kingdom, Scotland is part of the strongest and most well-regarded foreign diplomatic and aid service in the world. And we in the Scottish Conservatives believe that the Scottish Government has a responsibility to work with and in support of the UK's foreign diplomatic and aid services to promote the interests of Scotland's business and culture overseas. Of course I will give way to the Cabinet Secretary. I'd be disappointed if he didn't intervene.
Cabinet Secretary.
We're now 4 minutes into the contribution of Stephen Kerr. He still has not addressed the subject of this afternoon's debate, which is consideration into the Scottish Government's international network. When will he start to address this?
Cabinet Secretary, it is for the Chair to determine whether or not any speech is relevant to the motion. I don't think it is deteriorated. I don't think it has deviated from the motion any more than some of the other contributions. Stephen Kerr.
I'm very grateful, Presiding Officer, and clearly I've excited Angus Robertson this afternoon. He's quite agitated, simply because I'm reminding the Chamber of what is reserved and the tremendous part that Scotland plays and benefits from the United Kingdom's overseas activities. The Scottish Government should not be using international activities to undermine the United Kingdom Government's Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, nor should it be using it to push towards its independence agenda. SNP's stubbornness to adapt to the UK's departure from the European Union is limiting the trade, cultural links and soft power of Scotland around the world. Can I ask the Presiding Officer how many minutes I actually have left in my speech?
You can have time back for the interventions, and I said it was around 6 minutes. We have a little bit of time in hand.
All right. I can't always tell from the clocks, as you know, it's one of my pet subjects. Our departure from the European Union changed our relationships with countries across the world, and any government wishing the best interest of Scotland would have adapted its international framework to reflect this changing position. And this current framework, the new framework that was released yesterday, doesn't. The SNP, however, has not updated their framework, meaning the SNP have not actively sought to seek the benefits that leaving the European Union can provide. And whilst it's important to have a focus on Europe, it's vitally important that the Scottish Government seeks to engage with countries around the world. In her contribution to the Constitution Europe External Affairs and Culture Committee, Dr Kirsty Hughes from the Royal Society of Edinburgh wrote, "Scotland's trade, cultural links, soft power reputation and more extend globally, so prioritising some external affairs work beyond the EU is clearly necessary." End of quote. When in government, the Scottish Conservatives will adopt an international framework which would focus on boosting Scottish trade, cultural links and soft power across the world, and not just in the EU. The SNP, Presiding Officer, are too busy playing constitutional politics with international policy, with their serality, to promote and implement such a positive vision for Scotland. In an interview with Euronews in December last year, Angus Robertson made clear that taxpayers' money is being used to discuss a future independence referendum with foreign governments. They are using our international connections to further the cause of the Scottish Nationalist Party and not the Scottish people. It is shameful for a government of a modern democracy to put party before country. The Scottish Conservatives, Presiding Officer, would push aside that party political separatist obsession and develop a forward-looking and truly global international framework which allows Scottish trade, cultural links and soft power to increase in all parts of the world.